Welcome everyone to the third episode of Birds of a Feather Talk Together podcast. This week we focus on some mailbag questions from our listeners. We learn a little bit about some of the field work that John has done in Uganda, talk about genetic mutations in birds that can cause unique patterns in coloring, and also talk about birding on vacation. Just a reminder that you can submit your questions to podcast.birdsofafeather@gmail.com and we'll make sure to respond on the podcast. Okay, now let's get to our first question. I started making a list of every bird that I've spotted. I was curious what bird you were most proud of seeing in the wild. And this is from James in Seattle.
Yeah, that's always such a hard question. But all right, I'm going to just go pick one. So the Field Museum described a new species of bird based on field work that some of our colleagues did in Uganda, and we named it after Dave Willard, our retired collections manager. So it's called Willard's Sooty Boo-Boo. And one of the things we weren't sure about was what it sounded like. And we were doing field work in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo about 7-8 years ago, I guess, and we came back and we had a Josh Engel, who was working for us at the time. He's a local bird tour leader, and I basically had a day and a half or so, 2 days, where we drove across Uganda, got to the place where the bird had been originally found, met up with a guide who was with the original group, who knew exactly what the bird sounded like, went out with him the next morning, tape recorded the bird for the first time where somebody knew that it was Willard's Sooty Boo-Boo. Oh, wow. And then basically made our way back to the capital of Uganda and back to Entebbe and came back to Chicago. Wow. And it was just like, that was a fun trip because it was one of those things where we had a goal, we knew what we were looking for, and we got some amazing help finding it.
Oh, yeah. The stars were aligned on that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, my story is not like that. His is full of adventure, as his stories usually are. And mine, it was the first time I saw a cardinal.
Oh, okay.
Because I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. There were no cardinals there. And so the first time I came to Louisiana, I got out of the car and there was this bright red bird, and I'd never seen it before in real life, and everybody's like, why are you so excited by that? I'm like, I've never seen anything like this before. Yeah. So mine is more mundane, but that's the point, right, is that each bird means something to someone else. So I love brown creepers, for example, in North America. Everybody has their own thing. Is it the flashiest bird? No. Is it maybe the most interesting one? Probably not, but it's kind of what appeals to me as a person. So everybody has their own thing.
Right.
That's one of the good things about birds.
Yeah.
That, there's room for everybody to have their own thing.
Yeah. So what about you guys?
Yeah, so mine isn't a very exciting one, but the story behind it I really like. So mine was a white-breasted nuthatch, and we were on a guided tour with our Audubon group last fall, and we didn't know what that was, and everyone was spotting it, and they saw one, and we couldn't find it. And then we kind of got like split off from the group, and they were, maybe 5 minutes ahead of us, and we saw it on our own. And there's this hiker that's walking by and sees us with our binoculars, all excited, and he's not a birder, and what do you guys see? And he probably thought it was a hawk or, an owl or something. And I was like, a white-breasted nuthatch, and he was just like, okay. He just walked away. Like, I could have, I was speaking a different language. I don't think he even realized that was a bird. Yes. But that was a moment where I was like so proud that I remembered what it was. I was like, I don't know.
I was so proud of you because I had just been told the name too, and I was totally starstruck when the guy asked, and I had no idea what the bird was calling. So
we were joking. I was saying if he had asked like 5 minutes later, I might have not known it. Yeah. It was like. And then I have another one actually, and this was on our second date. We were in Colorado, and it was nighttime, and we were driving back we went snowshoeing at night, and didn't really know each other that well. And there was an owl. And at the time, I didn't look up what kind of owl it was. It wasn't a great horned, but there was an owl on a light post. And we were driving, and I was like, I think I just saw an owl, and like slammed on the brakes. And it's one of those moments where I'm like, I hope she is okay with this. I hope she thinks this is as cool as I do.
That's how you know you've become a bird watcher. When you do something like that.
Slam on the brakes, do a U-turn, go back, and we got out and looked at it.
Yes.
And you were like amazed as I was. And
Yes.
we were like, all right, good.
We're good match.
Yeah.
So you must have your own then, Amanda.
Yeah. So Shannon, mine just happened last weekend. We because we were talking about this ahead of time, and we were at the Chicago Botanic Garden, and saw a whole slew of cool birds there. But I saw a bird that I had only read about, and it was a very common bird like yours, Shannon, but it was I think it's called a piebald robin, like a robin that has vitiligo.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it was a robin that had, its head was almost 100% white, and then it had white speckles all over it. So I was really excited about that.
Yeah, for a long time we had a house sparrow in our yard that had a characteristic patch of white on it, and it was around for maybe a couple of years, and then it's not there anymore. But when you see anomalies like that, it's really the people who have found birds that are half male and half female.
Yes.
There's all kinds of really bizarre things. Or albino, where all of the pigment production has been turned off.
Yes.
What causes that? Is that like I have like a mole? Is that like the same thing? Or?
I mean, at some level, yes.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time, I mean, that's one of the things. I mean, what happens to those individuals is most of the time they probably can't attract mates. They may attract more predators. So but you never know. And there's some neat stories out in the bird world of patterns where you can clearly see that partial albinism was actually favored in a small population, such that all the males in that population now have that trait, where a group that another population next to them doesn't.
Wow.
And so sometimes, I mean, mutations like that have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And so they are most of the time just moles and things, but you never know.
Okay, interesting.
Can be.
Yeah. So a mutation could cause the lack of any deposition of pigment into feathers. And if that's how you're colored, then you don't have any pigment in you. But what's more common than complete albinism is these partial ones, where there might be a little bit of pigment, but there have been other mutations. And if those mutations happen in your eggs and your sperm, then there's the potential for evolution to act on them. So if it's just an individual, that's, not going to last in an evolutionary sense. But if a mutation happens in the individual and it gets into the eggs and sperm, and say if you're a group of birds of paradise and that happens to you, and your females prefer males with novelties, well, then if you look like that, you could be super duper attractive.
Okay. So that robin that you saw might have been the
the harbinger. I mean, this is
you just don't know.
But again, one of the neat things is we've got tools now in a genomic world where you can begin to ask those questions down to levels that we just never even had a remote possibility of even 30 years ago.
I mean, there could be a developmental thing that happened too in parts of cell division, and then that perpetuates itself where there's no deposition of pigment in feathers that are not from a genomic mutation like that, but from some kind of developmental process that kind of got a little bit askew.
But I just like the fact that you can see that bird as an individual. And a lot of times you'll see 100 robins and they all look very similar, they all sound similar, and you're not able to identify individuals readily. And so they really stick out when you see something like that.
Yeah, it's true. We saw like 1 million robins that day, and we're, that was the only one I remember.
Well, there could be safety in numbers.
That's true. That's true.
So next question is from Kathy in Downers Grove, Illinois. She says, what's your favorite place that you've traveled to? What birds did you see there?
Yeah, there's a long silence.
I'll start out. So I didn't go specifically to see birds, but I went kayaking in the San Juan Islands in northern Washington, And I saw, over 20 bald eagles, and it was like just the most I'd seen at one time. I think before then I had only seen a handful of bald eagles ever in the wild, and then all of a sudden it was like seeing multiple every day. We're kayaking, they're on the beach eating, they're up in the tree, they're circling overhead. It was like to go from never seeing them to like seeing so many was like really memorable for me. So that's what I've got.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, I'll stay in North America too, and I'll go with I worked as a Student Conservation Association volunteer in the Guadalupe Mountains National Park for a summer, and my job was to measure trails. And the chief naturalist said, when you've gone up a trail and get to the end of it, you can drop this wheel that we were using to measure them and just go birding. And so that's exactly what I did all the way through the Guadalupe Mountains all summer, and it was just a spectacular time with birds like golden eagles and spotted owls and birds that are only found in Texas and some of this part of the state, and it was just a beautiful remote area that I really enjoyed.
That's nice.
Well, of course, mine is more mundane yet again, but that's because I didn't grow up traveling very much, I didn't grow up bird watching, really. And so it wasn't until I got this summer job where it was my job to catalog and computerize the bird collections in Victoria at the museum that we went bird watching on Fridays. And I didn't know people did that. And I didn't know people got paid to do things like that. Nobody in my life had ever... I didn't know that was a job. I didn't know it was a thing. And so those very first trips with people who are knowledgeable to help me understand what I was seeing were just, obviously they're life-changing, because I went on to do something that I didn't even know existed when I was a kid. And so those first bird watching things, a lot of these first, when you go somewhere outside of your normal, there's always these first, like my silly cardinal. The first time I saw an armadillo, for example. There's all these kind of quirky things that you don't have to go somewhere really exotic to see things, but you can go places where you can see whole families of birds that you're not going to see around here. So that is, the first time I went to Costa Rica, I felt like someone had dropped me in a terrarium, and the house plants were 30 feet tall, and there were mixed species flocks all around me, and I had never experienced anything like that, where I couldn't even identify. It was so overwhelming. The idea that there can be so much variation from where you go. You get these experiences that are so profound.
I was wondering, when you to vacation, do you make it a bird, like a bird event?
Vacation?
Yeah. Are you like, what's vacation?
Most of our holidays have revolved around our son's hockey, historically. Or from going to visit family is a lot of it. But we do travel for work too. So that's the reason I've been to some really fun places, is to go there to look at birds. But yeah, we're always, I always tell John he's going to drive us off the road because he's looking for birds. We have stopped plenty of times, and it's why we have really quirky habits on vacation. I like to go places where we can just do whatever we want, because my calendar rules my life normally, and I want to go to a place where I don't have things that are scheduled. If we want to stop somewhere, we stop. If we want to go somewhere else, we do that on our own time. Yeah. I think we'd probably drive people crazy if they traveled anywhere with us. We used to drive our son crazy. He thinks bird watching is boring and that we move too slowly. That was his take. And that forests are scary. So if you grow up in the Midwest, you think the Pacific Northwest's rainforests are pretty scary.
That's funny.
What do you think about vacations? He took bizarre vacations like that as a kid.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I'm growing up in a birding family. I mean, I basically tell people I got into birding because I realized if I was going to spend any time with my dad or my brother, I'd better start getting interested.
Oh, okay.
And we used to do hardcore birding trips every once in a while.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like my dad driving straight through down to southern Mexico and then working our way around southern Mexico to various places looking for birds. So
That's awesome.
that's yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds like our kind of.
Yeah. I feel like we've slowly started working that into, like, I don't know.
Yes.
We definitely get outside more when we go on vacation.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know. We do a lot of nature-based vacations
Yeah.
and slowly want to start working birds into it. So.
Yeah.
Let's just say you're not going to see one of us on a cruise ship.
Okay. Neither of us. Yeah, we won't either.
I do not want to go. I don't want to go on cruise ships.
No. All right. Well, thank you for the questions. You can reach out our mailbag, podcast.birdsofafeather@gmail.com. We look forward to getting some more questions, and we can field them in our next episode. And I think that's it for this episode. Is there anything anybody wants to add? Or
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks everyone for listening. Thanks as always to Earhole Studios in Chicago for letting us record there. We really appreciate it and wanted to thank all of our listeners for continuing to support us. If you are enjoying this podcast and think someone else that you know would enjoy it, we ask that you please share it with them. If you have any feedback, any questions, or want to be featured on our mailbag, please reach out at podcast.birdsofafeather@gmail.com. Once again, that's podcast.birdsofafeather@gmail.com, and we will make sure to respond. We'll have more episodes coming up, so please tune in, and thank you everyone for listening. Have a great day.